Yeah, maybe this one. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll just be holding it. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming this morning, and I'm so happy to be in a lecture hall again, because for the past 3 years, I'm just in a 2-dimensional flat screen. I'm just one of the boxes there. So it's so good to be here again in real person with real scholars, educators, teachers. So I'm really privileged to have the chance to work with NIE scholars, teacher educators, my Professor Moklis. I've learned a lot from him during the past year when he spent his sabbatical with me. And it's not just about education, but about culture and about language. So I began to have this profound interest in thinking about content-based language education. Now, before I start, I need to explain the title to you a bit. How many of you have heard about content-based language education? Right. Now, it is what you have been doing all the time, right? How many of you are language teachers? I think all of you are, right? You might be teaching Malay language, or the Chinese language, or the Tamil language, or the English language, or other languages. And let me know, can you teach language without content? No, right? And let me share with you a personal story. Sometimes some people think they can, and those people happened in the 1960s when I was in Hong Kong, learning English in primary school 1. And the English textbook featured a man with a pen. So the textbook says, is this a man? Yes, this is a man. There is the picture of a man. And then there is a picture of a pan, the frying pan you have in the kitchen. Is this a pan? Yes, this is a pan. Okay, a man and a pan. So the whole chapter is like that. So about 30 years later, my husband, Martin, and I went to in Shatin, went to Japan City. I mean, we all go there for kitchen utensils. We forgot to bring our shopping bag, and we don't want to waste a wet plastic bag. So we were there to buy a frying pan. And then Martin was very nice because we parked our car just downstairs. He said, oh, let me carry the pan for you. So suddenly I saw a man and a pan. So I said, hold it, stand there, let me take a picture of you. A man and a pan. So that's the content. Now, even with such impoverished English textbook, there's still content. But it's so highly inauthentic that after 30 years of coming across, why it sticks in my mind? Because a man in a pan, I've never seen a man in a pan in my everyday life. I mean, a man carrying a pan. That's what that picture is. Not cooking with a pan. So there is content even in the most poorly designed textbook to teach a language. But that content is so poor, so uninteresting, so inauthentic that after 30 years something, I finally saw a man in a pan in my everyday life. Now, here I am with the best educators here. NIE is so famous, and Singapore education is so good in teaching English. But what about our mother tongue language education, right? So you're also doing, because you have so many challenges. Now, English being the dominant language is so difficult. And then also, it's not just dominant in Singapore, it's dominant in the whole world as a global language. So it's and dominant in pop culture. Now, your students when they do TikTok or do social media, do YouTube, do you know what kind of language social media do they tune in most frequently? Now, the Chinese colleagues told me maybe they might tune in to some Chinese content, Chinese pop songs, right? The Tamil colleagues and the Malay language colleagues, you need to tell me more about your young students. Do they tune into Malay language social media, Tamil language social media? Now, because content is king in the digital era, content is king because there's so much happening, and they open their eyes in the morning, you know what? They just reach out for their phone, okay? Our younger generations. And then they switch on their phone, they switch on YouTube, they switch on TikTok or whatever social media, Line or other social media. And then they go to their social media and go to the YouTube videos. We can't compete with them. So content is king. I want to, I couldn't exaggerate more. I couldn't stress more the importance of content. That's why language teaching has to go beyond just teaching grammar, which is important, don't get me wrong, teaching vocab, which is important. These are the building blocks. Teaching vocabulary, teaching grammar is so important. They are the building blocks. But then if our students, they tune out to us, once, okay, open to page 25, let's look at the picture. Tell me what the person in the picture is doing. You can use the vocabulary in the worksheet. Now, are they excited about doing this, right? There is still content like a man in a pen, but the content is not authentic. It's not interesting to them, not interesting to me either. I mean, so content is king or queen or princess, okay? Just to say, without content, without successful, without interesting content, okay? Without authentic content that can be compelling to our young students. You agree? I hope you agree, because you're behind the mask, I cannot see whether you say. Angel, no, I think the most effective way is to drill them in grammar exercise and vocabulary exam. Important, because if content is not authentic, not interesting, what will be the other kind of motivation left? Instrumental exam, right? So our students are not dumb, they're very practical young beings. They're young, but they're practical. They would say, it's boring, but I need to do it. I need to pass the exam. So, okay, just let me know how I can pass the exam. If the exam is throw in the blanks, grammar, judgment test, MCQ, I'll just do those drills for you. But I'm not interested in really speaking the language or writing the language or expressing my own interesting ideas in that language. So I just want to, I spent this 10 minutes preamble, okay, just explaining content-based language education to try to bring you on board why I need to look at content and language integrated learning. Now I understand that most of my work is done in Hong Kong and now in Canada, working with now Canada immigrant children who need to learn content in their second or additional language. But the CLIL continuum, scholars have drawn out this soft CLIL or hard CLIL. So when the CLIL class is taught by like a science and math or history teacher, then we call it hard CLIL because the primary objective is to learn the content. And then soft CLIL is when the CLIL class is taught by language teachers like us. But we need to use compelling content, authentic, interesting content. Now the content doesn't need to be technical science and math, or the content can be our rich cultural content. So I've learned a lot of the Malay culture history from Mokles. He told me about how in Malacca, in the 15th century, in the 500 years ago, 700 years ago, the Malay language was the most important language in this part of the world. Is a lingua franca. All people coming to Malacca, to this part of the world, they speak Malay as a world language, possibly like French in the Middle Ages in Europe, like Chinese in East Asia during the ancient Tang dynasty, and like English during contemporary world, right? So we do have a rich cultural, historical content, a lot of history knowledge, a lot of cultural knowledge that we can use and draw upon to make our language teaching interesting. Okay, so I think I have hammered, okay, this is hard sell, okay. Have I been successful, okay, to persuade you about, first of all, listening? Because if you say, oh, I don't need to teach content-based language education, then you can switch on your social media and stop listening, because in the next part of my presentation, I will be talking about content-based language teaching. Okay, so any queries right now? I need people to challenge me because that helped me to improve, okay? Because every time when I say that, especially in Hong Kong, in China, in Taiwan, I've been to seminars with teachers. There will be someone telling me, Angel, we need to pass the exam. That's the most important thing, okay? Then I said, yes, if your students are motivated about the language, about the content, mediated by the language, then they will pass the exam. And we will still drill them with grammar drills. Don't get me wrong. I will still drill them with the vocab and the grammar. But get them excited about learning the rich cultural content and the rich historical content of our language, right? Okay, so I hope I'm half successful. You can leave the hall now, okay? Because I can just send you the PowerPoint. Because I think teaching, now I was in Melbourne just last week talking with colleagues, educators in Monash University, and I share with an AI educator, artificial intelligence, IT educator there. He was telling me in 20 years' time, the teaching profession will be replaced by AI robots. Yes, because AI, they are replacing accountants. They can do your tax return. And they are replacing medical professionals because they have such huge database. They can diagnose whether one has this cancer or not by looking at your X-ray radiographs. So can the teaching profession be replaced by AI? Now, if we are just doing grammar drills or teaching vocab, I'm sure an AI robot can take away our jobs. What makes us unique? I share with the colleague there, Neil. He was AI expert in education. I said, emotional well-being. Attending to our students' emotion needs, attending to our students' emotional, affective well-being. I think AI, well, maybe scholarship is advancing in AI, but I think in the next half a century, we still need passionate teachers. Now, not teachers who teach like an AI robot, okay? There are teachers, I have been like that too when I need to drill my students. Passionate teachers. The passion is the single unit feature that AI robot doesn't have yet. Okay, I don't know when you have passionate AI robot teachers. They can pretend to be passionate. Well, I don't know. They fake the appearance of being passionate. If we teachers are not knowledgeable about the cultural content, about the history of our language, about the culture, right? Or if we are not passionate, we are not interested ourselves, how can we instill interest in our students? Then they will be left to be just doing it for instrumental motivation, exam, right? Drills, and they don't use it. And that defeats the purpose of maintaining and keeping our language, our mother tongue language, right? So to summarize my prolonged preamble, one is why I need to listen to Angel now about content-based language teaching, okay? Number two is passionate and knowledgeable about your content, about your cultural and history of the language. Two takeaways. Without passion, the students will say, oh, the teacher is just doing his job. She needs to do this because the MOE asked her to do this, asked him to do this. But if the student can feel your excitement about the history, the culture, the knowledge, then they might have a chance to become interested, and they will do a lot more outside the classroom. Because you only have, Professor Wilkerson, you only have four hours a week for mother tongue, about that. To learn a language, I mean, you are all applied linguists, you know that. To learn a language is much more than 4 hours. Much more than, so they need to have the motivation to go and seek out the language, the content, outside of the 4 hours with the mother tongue language teacher. Otherwise, it's an uphill battle, right, to do mother tongue language teaching in Singapore or in the world, actually, with the global domination of English in every domain of our lives. Okay, so I'll go on. Okay, so this is my presentation overview. So what is content-based language education? I have already explained to you, so I can skip this slide. Okay. Now, pedagogical translanguaging is a theoretical and instructional approach that aims at improving language and content competencies in school context by using resources from the learner's holistic linguistic repertoire. Now, repertoire is like a toolkit. Now, for me, I have I think I have a 3.5 repertoire. I have Mandarin Chinese, I have Cantonese, I have English. So that's 3, right? 3 tools in my repertoire. And then the 0.5 is I have 0.2 Japanese, 0.1 Korean, and then 0.1 French, okay? So you don't need to be fully fluent in a language to claim competencies. You can have partial competencies. So everyone count your linguistic repertoire. How many do you have in your repertoire? 3? Now, drawing on the holistic linguistic repertoire to do what? To activate our knowledge, right? Now, when I talk about K-pop, Korean pop culture, I will activate my linguistic repertoire. 안녕하세요. 사랑해요. 오빠. 아저씨. You are ajoshi, you're not oppa. So when I have fun with my friends who are K-pop fans, we draw on my 0.2 repertoire, okay? The vocabulary. When I'm with my Japanese friends, I draw on my 0.2 Japanese repertoire. So you see, now some people think, oh, translanguaging, pedagogical translanguaging means use L1. No. Japanese is not my L1, Korean is not my L1, okay? French is not my L1. It's drawing on every single bit and pieces of your knowledge, your resources to communicate, to share with your friends in different contexts of your life, right? So Mandarin Chinese, I learned Mandarin Chinese now because I was born in, okay, I am exposing your age, Professor Chris. In the year of 1962, which was British Hong Kong. So I didn't get a chance to learn Mandarin in school. I didn't have, so I learned it by myself, Mandarin Chinese. So I learned Mandarin Chinese by watching Korean TV dramas dubbed into Mandarin Chinese. So I had tons of hours of exposure to Mandarin Chinese used authentically. But then don't ask me to give my seminar in Mandarin Chinese. I can give a seminar on Korean TV pop culture in Mandarin Chinese. So you see what I mean? You need exposure, tons of exposure. And then you cannot just rely on their contact hours with you. How would they be motivated? Because they seek out the content. They seek out the exposure outside of the 4 hours in our mother tongue classroom, right? Okay, so let me read it. Pedagogical translanguaging is learner-centered and endorses the support and development of all the languages used by learners. Now, I couldn't express the importance, how important it is to be able to be multilingual in global communication, intercultural context. You cannot just say, okay, I just speak English. That's important. I just speak English. No, you need to be able to crack a joke in a conference hall. You need to be able to interact with business professionals outside of the business venues. So you need to be able to be so flexible. You need to be what Angela Crease in Birmingham University called the flexible bilingual, the flexible multilingual. It doesn't mean that you need to be fully fluent in all the languages. Just meaning that development of meta-linguistic awareness are softening the boundaries between languages. When learning languages and content, pedagogical translanguaging can be applied in language and content classes and can be valuable for the protection and promotion of minority languages. Now, Cenoz and Gorter, Cenoz and Gorter, they work in the Basque country of Spain. In the Basque country, they speak the Basque language, which is totally different from Spanish. It's kind of like your Malay language is totally different from Singaporean English. So in the Basque country, they need to teach students Spanish, the national language, and the Basque language, their regional, their heritage, their community language, their cultural heritage, rich cultural heritage, and English. So students in the Basque country, they are struggling with 3 languages, very much like Singapore students. So that's why Cenoz and Gorter, they have developed this approach called pedagogical translanguaging, which is learner-centered, and developing meta, meaning going beyond one language so that they can be flexible, shifting across different languages in different contexts, in intercultural communication context, being successful communicators in our global situation. However, I'm also a very practical person. Whenever I talk about pedagogical translanguaging with teachers from China, from Taiwan, from Singapore, from Hong Kong, from Japan, they will put up a hand and say, but if we allow students to fall back on their familiar resources, they will all use familiar languages. Like in Singapore, they will all speak Singlish. They won't speak Malay, they won't speak Tamil, they won't speak Chinese in the classroom. I'm totally with you. I've been struggling with this, right? So that's why I have developed this MEC. So MEC, Multimodalities-Entextualization Cycle, MEC. Now, what is the MEC? It is to make sure that in the first 2 stages, you can plan a unit of work. It can be 3 lessons, it can be 4 lessons. You can divide the lesson into 3 stages. It can be in 1 or 2 lessons. Then in the first 2 stages is having compelling, interesting content. Drawing from the history, the culture of your language, of the Malay language, of the Chinese language, of the Tamil language, we are proud of our cultures, proud of our histories. Draw on those compelling, interesting content. You can use YouTube videos, you can use research, you can use drama, you can use role play. Just, you need to be young at heart. What is interesting to us, we are old cakes. In Cantonese, we have this name, old cakes, meaning we're out of date, okay? Young people in Hong Kong, Cantonese speaking, they call us old cakes. So we need to find out what kind of multimedia they use, they're interested in. Just to get them interested, excited about finding out about the topic. I want to know more about this topic. Then once they got excited, wanting to learn more, then get them a task. Get them to find out about more, to read and take notes. Now, taking notes is very important, but take notes, it doesn't need to be boringly using just a table. You can use mind maps, you can use tree diagrams, you can use narrative story map. So you can just Google mind maps or graphic organizers. You can find all kinds of interesting graphic organizers to scaffold students' information extracting the main points. And then they take notes using graphic organizers from readings, and you allow them to use all kinds of multilingual sources. Go to the internet, Malay source, Tamil source, Chinese source, English sources. Use all the sources, but they need to give you the notes using the mind map or the graphic tree diagram or graphic organizer. Then after they got some knowledge, right? Knowledge, they need to read, do research, go out of the classroom at home, assign the assignment, do the research, learner-centered research, come back to present what they have found out, the knowledge. Then stage 3 is what I call the push output. You need to push them to output. Output what? Output to express their knowledge in the target language. Not just the target language, but the target genre. If you want them to write a short poem in Tamil, in Chinese, in Malay, give them examples in the first 2 stages of the poem about the topic. Then they output their knowledge, their interesting ideas using the target genre, the target text type, the target language. I call this the pushed output because we are all a little bit relaxed, right? So stage 3, we artificially constrain them. They need to output in the target language, target genre, target language style. Okay, using the target vocab, you provide them scaffolding. You need to give them a lot of examples. Don't just ask them to present in a target language, okay? They will feel so frustrated and give up. Our students need a lot of success. Otherwise, they feel, no, it's too difficult for me, especially Chinese. I don't know, Malay equally, Tamil, especially Chinese. Oh, it's so difficult. I give up. I just need to pass the exam. Don't ask me, right? So that's the basic idea of the MEC. It's a planning tool. It's just, you can use other planning tools. It's just a lesson planning tool that you have, roughly speaking, you can mix and match. You don't need to follow it religiously. You can have 3 stages in the same unit, in the same lesson, right? Mini stages, right? In the same lesson. So exciting them, arousing their interest, getting them to do the research, read a lot of different sources and extract the main points, take notes using interesting graphic organizers, appropriate. If a story text, then use a narrative story map. If it is the information text, then use a mind map, or you can search on the internet with graphic organizers. And then the output, the push output stage is the most critical stage. A lot of us just having fun doing the first two stages and bye-bye, okay. Then they don't have the push output stage, right? And then because it's important that they sense success in, oh, I can write a poem in Malay. Well, a poem can be 3-9 poem, right? In Japanese, they have haiku. You can introduce a modified haiku. It's a 3-9 haiku poem with lots of illustration, pictures, visuals. Or I can write a short story in Malay, or I can write a drama script in Malay. So you can try a whole range of genres. Doesn't need to be a boring textbook reading passage, right? So you can experiment with lots and lots. Okay, so this is the. So in the first stage, multimodality, multimedia, all kinds of resources. In the second stage, you want to get them. Reading is for knowledge. Content is king, right? It's not just for fun, okay? Content, but once they got excited about the content, they want to know the knowledge. And then the push output stage, they need to create something. Creativity is there, using what they have learned in stage 1 and 2. So I have an example. Now this example is developed in Taiwan. My former doctoral student in Hong Kong, she's from Taiwan. And it's more attuned to the Taiwan syllabus. It's about learning English, but you can adapt and change it to about learning Malay or Tamil or Chinese. So this, now this concept is about parallel tasks. I will give you an example of parallel tasks. Parallel tasks are similar in terms of content and language demands. So using similar vocab, similar sentence patterns, grammar patterns, and about the same topic or related topic, but with meaningful variation. I'll show you in the following example. So because students need to repeat the cycle again, and again, because you need to repeat stage 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, so that they get lots and lots of practice in expressing their interesting creative ideas, producing output, push output. And they need to have that sense of success through repeated practice, but then repeated practice with slightly different variation in the content will make it interesting for them. So the example is from the Taiwan syllabus. It's about food detective. So the first task is students are asked to identify food items that are healthy or unhealthy. And then they need to repeat in another cycle, repeat a task to design a healthy lunchbox. And then later they need to design an unhealthy lunchbox. So they at least have 3 tasks using similar vocabulary, similar grammar patterns, but with the meaning slightly varied across the 3 parallel tasks. This is the Taiwanese syllabus that we try to integrate the language teaching into their syllabus. I mean, try to relate to their regular syllabus with social studies, with healthy eating. So the target, now planning your lesson is important. You need to have language learning outcomes and content learning outcomes. Now, even though with soft CLIL, meaning the primary objective is language learning, still you want your content to be authentic. You can't have 40 content, right? You don't want to teach misconceptions about your cultural knowledge, about your history knowledge. So you need to plan. So for example, in this example, it's about teaching English, food items, vocabulary, and about using grammatical patterns to give a reason, because, okay? And then the content is, they need to know the knowledge about what food items are healthy and what are not healthy and why. And then they need to be able to create a healthy diet. So this is the stage 1. And then this is the PowerPoint and worksheet that Sally in Taiwan developed for the Taiwanese students. These are primary students, grade 6 students. So mission 1, find out the foods in Jiayi's lunchbox, draw lines to match the 7 food items with the pictures. So the first task is pretty easy, matching, right? Learning vocab. And then they just get the image, right? They might know, oh, this broccoli. They might not know the name for broccoli, but they know other names. They know sausages. They know pearl milk tea, 珍珠奶茶. So the first task is meant to arouse interest. And then stage 2, now that, oh, why is Jiayi's lunchbox unhealthy? They need to learn more. So we give them source. You can ask them to find source. You can also give them reading text with lots of diagrams, visuals to support their access to the knowledge, to the content, the food pyramid. And then we introduce the genre-based approach, that is simple organization of an information text. You have introduction, you have description and conclusion. Now, mind you, this is for academic English learning. For you, you don't need to use, you can use a story. You can use a poem. You can use other genres. But this is for academic English genres. And then you can use this graphic organizer to take notes. So the food pyramid, what is it? Why do we need it? How to use it? So you can assign this research task and get students to give you the notes. They can consult different language sources. They can Google. They can read different sources, but they need to produce this. They need to fill in the notes for you. This is the knowledge quest. They need to find the knowledge from multiple sources, multilingual sources. So this is stage 2. You allow them to use multilingual sources and take notes. So finally, the output, the push output, you need to give them, they need to give a reason. So Jiayi has a healthy meal because, and then you give them scaffolding. So 10 sentence making powerhouse, I call it, it's just a table. Sentence making powerhouse. They can use the sentence making table to generate useful sentences to output, to produce the short paragraph for you. So you need to design your Malay, your Tamil, your Chinese language sentence making table so that they can generate new sentences. Now, okay, so now the parallel task. So Superman has lost his ability to save the world. He needs some human food right now. Can you create a healthy lunchbox for him? So this is, they can draw the lunchbox and then label the lunchbox and give reasons to say why it is healthy. And then another parallel task is your enemy stole your books and ran away. Now you have a chance to create a lunchbox for your enemy. Can you create an unhealthy one so that your enemy loses energy? So they get another task, parallel task. So repetition with variation. So, and then extended a further cycle, because it's in the Taiwan context, we found a Taiwan video about one day. Do you like bubble tea? You have bubble tea in Singapore, right? One day, just drinking one bubble tea, you will gain 5 kilograms in a month. Okay, so this video in Chinese. So we back to stage 1, right? So it has subtitles, so students can, even though their Chinese might not be so good, they can understand. And then how to make bubble tea? So reading, taking notes, genre approach. And then another graphic organizer to take notes. How to make, what are the ingredients to make bubble tea? So they need to take notes, they need to extract the information. Then parallel tasks. How can we make a healthier bubble tea by using substitutes? So instead of syrup, maybe honey. Instead of 10 teaspoons of white sugar, maybe 2 teaspoons. So we need to have parallel tasks, but meaningful parallel tasks. They need to redesign the recipe for bubble tea to make it healthier. Okay, so now this is just an example from Taiwan. Now I got just yesterday, so I haven't got a chance to create a PowerPoint for you. Just yesterday, I learned from Professor Mokris that you have the cultural hero, the movie, the recent movie, Makino. Yeah, Makino. And I went to see the trailer. So I got excited. I really want to see the whole movie. So that can be in a stage 1 to excite your student about learning about, because to explain someone like Angel coming from Hong Kong or someone coming from Canada, who is Makino? Why is he, when was he born? Why was he important? You can have a mind map. You can have a mind map. And then cultural hero. So I'm going to use the whiteboard now. So I will have new share and then the whiteboard and then share. So you can have a mind map. Stage 1, you can have Makino. So you need to, someone coming from Hong Kong, coming from Canada, Angel is here in our class. You need to explain to Angel, who is Makino? Okay, so you create a mind map with your students together. So, and then you ask WH questions, right? When was he born, right? Who was he? What did he do? Why is he important? Then you send them away to do the research, Google. They might not be able to find I only find 2 English sources. So don't worry, they will be reading too much English. So you allow them to find the English sources. Then they will be forced to find the Malay sources or forced to read up a lot. And then you provide them with the Malay text. You have to create the text yourself, okay? You write the text. Who is Makino? Write a small 1-paragraph text to answer those 6 WH questions, right? When was he born? Why was he important? You can also have other questions. So this is just one way of creating your MEC, your cycle. And then after they have find out, then ask them to prepare 1-minute YouTube video to send to Angel. And Professor Mokris will send it to Angel in Canada to explain, to teach me, because I really want to learn more about the cultural history and the historical heroes in the Malay history, right? So this could be one possibility, and then I need to clear the drawing. Another possibility is using timeline, right? So what is the history of the Malay people, and when did the British colonialists came? And so you can also use another graphic organizer with the dates. So I have another PowerPoint new share with this, okay. Okay, so this is just one possibility. You can create your own, right? So you can, this is content, right? Now, I don't know whether the young Singaporeans, Malay Singaporeans know much of their history. So do they know Pahang, when Pahang joined the Klang War, am I correct? Yeah, so the timeline, so send your students, go home, do the research. You can consult whatever sources, English, Malay, whatever sources, but create a timeline for me, come back and present to me. They can work in pairs, they can work in groups, it can be individual, they can do pair work, group work. They can. So we can use all those good teaching methodologies, task-based teaching approach, pair work approach, think, pair, share, project inquiry, project-based. You can mobilize all your language teaching techniques and methodologies, use all of them. These are good techniques to use, but the passion has to be there. Otherwise, a robot can do all of these for us. Okay, if you yourself, I don't care about I don't care about Makilo, I don't care, it's in the history, I don't care. If you are not interested yourself, if you're not passionate yourself about our own cultural history, you don't feel proud about your own cultural history, then your students won't feel any pride. They won't feel any interest, right? But passion is infectious. If you are passionate, an AI robot can fake passion, but they cannot instill such passionate interest in the content, in the cultural content. Once they're interested, get them to create, do the research, create a poem, create a cartoon strip, create a graphic novel. The film, is it good? Remake the film. The film might have some wrong historical details. Correct the film. Write a review of the film. Use pictures, picture story. Use all kinds of genres to get them interested in creating something that they can feel proud of in the target language. Okay. So I think I've used up a lot of time. Oh, I'm sorry, it's almost an hour now. So I'm sorry, I could have created, with your input next time, send me your PowerPoints, your MEC, or your parallel tasks using your national heroes, your cultural heroes. And we have lots of Chinese cultural content, Tamil cultural content. I'm constantly fascinated by the history, by the knowledge. Now you see, translanguaging is just about language. I am now researching transknowledging because I have been interacting with Professor Muklis. There are so many very important books written in Malay language historically with tons of knowledge, which we cannot access because we don't speak the language, we don't read the language, we just read Western English. But there are cultural knowledge perspectives unique to this part of the world. And it gets lost because everything is in English, right? It gets lost. So if students can feel proud in their cultural history, in their cultural knowledges, because there can be knowledge systems embedded in our culture, which are not accessible in English. In the Arabic knowledge system, in the Malay knowledge system, in the Hindu or Tamil or Chinese historical knowledge system, so transknowledging. So once students get interested in content, in knowledge, and feel proud, they want to learn more. And then they will see tons of hours of exposure outside the classroom. You don't need to worry about, oh, I need to get them to have monolingual, one language only. Because 4 hours, if they speak Malay in 4 hours, just 4 hours. But once they get excited and proud about their cultural knowledge, cultural content, they seek tons of hours outside of the 4-hour mother tongue language classroom. And that we can stand a chance to help them to learn the language, right? We need tons of exposure and interested exposure, not boringly passive exposure. So I hope my presentation has been interesting and compelling, and there's lots of content for you. And I want to say thank you. And once again, thanks so much for the privilege to share with you here. That's it. stop share.
Thank you so much, Professor Angelin, for that wonderful presentation. I think with some of it might not be unfamiliar to us, but clearly once you use the term, all the different instructional pedagogies that we've learned before in NIE. But I think just placing all of that within a context where content is king, like you said, and how we should, utilize content to get students motivated and allowing students to use whatever resources that they have. Because the main aim, the important aim is to get them excited about the language. And they could, develop their interest in language, whatever, in the target language, whatever languages that they have as the resources, as well as whatever other resources that they have, visuals, digital, what have you. But the ultimate aim is actually to make them to be excited to use the target language, which in our case is Malay, Chinese, and Tamil. Right. So, is there any question or queries that you would like to put to Professor Angelin? She asked me to challenge her, so you can also say that no, that's not really good.
That's actually why AI learns so fast. How the AI algorithm learns is when after an AI performance, lots of feedback to the AI. Negative feedback, positive feedback, so that the AI learns. Okay, so I'm an AI now.
Yes, anyone? We also welcome questions, comments from those via Zoom as well, and Ray will make sure that those questions will be forwarded to us. Well, everyone understood and accepted wholeheartedly.
Prof. Muklis, can I share?
Yes, sure. Please carry on.
Okay, this is Sita. Thanks, Prof, for the enlightening speech. I hope you are fine and good. Regarding this comprehension, just now you mentioned the method. Can you hear me?
Yeah, for a moment we can't hear you.
Generally, in the native language learners, they will be having this kind of a content-based learning in their mother tongue language or maybe in their English language. But in our second language teaching, generally, the skills also having more important. But the content-based teaching is very good because then the students will be able to understand, and then they will be using the language and content, culture, all for their whole life instead of just classroom only. So for the teachers, we have to develop them about the content, and then how to share the content with passion. This is one important issue. Through the web quest and a lot of now new teaching techniques, we can develop the content and then can ask the students to learn about the content. So for that, we have to go through, maybe we have to plan our lessons based on their authentic experience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think I need to say learner-generated content is king. Okay, teacher-generated content is important. So I totally agree with you. But you have to remember, of course, we have content. Even with an ad and pen, there is content. We need to make sure we are young at heart. Now we can be aging if we're just 16. But teachers need to, what is interesting content to us might or might not be interesting content to the students. So we need to interact, share ideas, listen to young people in our communities to find out what they're interested in, what is interesting content, and then make the connections between the kind of content they want to use and the kind of content they're interested in. We need to bridge, make the connections.
Thank you, Professor Sita. She's the head of the Tamil language division.
Thank you, Professor Sita. Yes.
Yes, please.
Hi, thank you for coming on talking. I just want to quickly introduce myself because I'm working on part of a large-scale study related to mother tongue learning in Singapore classrooms. So many of my colleagues are in Malay, Tamil, Mandarin lessons. So one of the aspects we're looking at in terms of analysis is code switching. When teachers and or students switch between languages with a view to kind of fortify the student's understanding, or it may simply be a classroom management strategy, or even to kind of enhance interpersonal rapport, so to speak. So, I mean, my question is not so much with a practitioner focus, but in your view and experience, how is pedagogical translanguaging really different from what we understand as code switching?
A very good question. I think the phenomena are the same. We're looking at the same phenomena. So Ophelia Garcia, who came up with Professor Liwei, who came up with this translanguaging idea, is the outsider perspective and the insider perspective. So the outsider perspective, looking at people, oh, they are co-mixing, they are co-switching. So you as an analyst looking at them, the outsider perspective. Now the insider perspective is, well, they might also think, okay, let me not switch to Chinese or switch to Malay. But a lot of the time when they're really focused on making the meaning, in communicating, they forget which code they are using. They just utilize, mobilize all the resources, communicative resources, including the body gestures, facial expressions, the multimodalities, and also the linguistic resources, multiple linguistic resources, maybe one vocabulary item here, one sentence pattern there, one lexical phrase there. So the insider perspective is, my focus is on communicating my meaning, right? But then if you use the sociolinguistic lens and then you look at, oh yeah, they are co-mixing, co-switching, the two descriptions, the two analyses are compatible. It's just which perspective you're using. So the translanguaging perspective is focused on making meaning, on communicating, using whatever resources at your disposal. But as an outsider analyzing it, yeah, they are co-switching, they're co-mixing. Yeah, so just different lenses, different theoretical.
Essentially the same. There is
the phenomena are the same.
Communication competency, and there is a target language based on which the teacher or the learner, probably himself or herself, draws on the linguistic repertoires available.
Exactly, there's different focuses of your analysis.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, yeah. That's the usual confusing part about this topic. Yes.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Can I just make a statement?
Yes, please.
I'm one of the lecturers at ALC. Actually, we did attend your presentation last month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same
SCCL, MOB, and SCAB. I do agree with you that the passion is very important. And then many teachers actually they overlook this element. Whatever content, whatever technique and the IT skill we can pick up along the way, but the passion is more important in the classroom. This is why I totally agree with you. Thank you for your sharing.
Thank you. I feel like there's a lot of research on teacher identity or teacher transformation or teacher change. I feel like it's back to teacher as a passionate teacher, okay? When teacher has a passion about what she wants, what he wants to teach, I don't think I think good things will happen. Of course, we still need to learn the techniques, and we cannot just do whatever we like, right? But AI robots can learn all those techniques, right? Can they have the passion? Maybe not yet. I'm sure one day they can fake passion.
Okay. There is one question from participant via Zoom, Mr. Herman Hassan, our friend from the National Library. And she puts this question to Dr. Angels, sharing about Mak Kilau is more suitable for the teaching of comprehension and composition. How about grammar, like prefixes and suffixes?
Yeah, you need to make those sentence making tables. Now, I don't speak Malay, so I can't help you, but you can help me. So, for example, when they need to talk about the WH question, right? I don't know whether you have WH questions. You must have. So you can teach. Yeah. Then you teach them the difference because they are familiar with English, Singapore in English. So this meta-linguistic awareness is important. Now in Malay, we don't start with WH. You need to teach them explicitly because they are familiar with English. Why don't we leverage on English and say that no, English start with WH, when, where, why. In Malay, we start, and then give them a lot of example sentences and have a sentence making table. I call it sentence making powerhouse because it's not just a static table. You can generate new sentences using the sentence making powerhouse. So the students can go, oh, now I can make new sentences. I'm not just a parrot, just repeating the teacher or the textbook. Right? So we have to teach grammar. We have to teach lexical, grammatical patterns. I call them patterns. They are rules, but I prefer to call them patterns because patterns evolve and change. Rules seem to be set in stone, right? But they're the same thing, like the same phenomena. We need to give them the building blocks so that they can express their knowledge in their loud language, right? Without the building blocks, the vocab, the sentence patterns, the grammatical patterns, but don't reduce them into a rule, right? Give them tons of examples, but extract the pattern so that they can generate new sentences using prefixes, suffixes. They are very generative, right? Like Mark is the gentleman. Then you can use Mark Marcus, can I say that? Now what about for a lady? You have similar prefix or whatever. I'm totally naive. So generative. Teach them generative language patterns that they can use.
Yeah, so we're not abandoning the teaching of grammar. Yeah, but those are still very important as an instrument for them to express those meanings that they've acquired from the various sources. Any other question?
You need to train me, this AI robot, by giving me critical feedback so that I can learn.
It's part of neural network.
Yes. Yeah, neural networks.
Hi, Dr. Engel. So mostly for
can you introduce yourself?
My name is Azima. I am from CPD. So for mostly profiles that choose translanguaging as an approach, what would be the profiles of the students or the community like that they have decided to move from mono to translanguaging as the approach?
So the question is why or what?
Usually, what are the profiles of the students? Is it
profile of students? If your students are still amenable to exciting content. Now, if they are very, like a lot of Chinese students I've come across, that just don't give me content, I just need exam skills. No, of course, I don't talk about our children, exam skills, that's what they want, right? And the level, they can be complete beginners, elementary students of the language, or they can be advanced or intermediate. So levels, we can adjust the difficulty level of the language. So the profile of the students will be, they need to trust you that you have passion and you want to share with them. If they don't trust you, you're just a teacher, you need to help me to, you're just a service provider, some of the students. Help me to pass the exam. Okay, then I'll give up. I'll just help them to pass the exam. But have I answered your question?
Yeah, so usually for home languages of
Singaporeans now that Malay language, like home language mostly are English, and let's say that we use Malay, but then we in our education we still are going to monolingual first. So when would the generation happen that this translanguaging approach will be transferred?
Oh right, if the yeah, I was hearing from Professor Lucas that lots more young Malay families are no longer speaking as much Malay in home, so they're speaking a lot of English. So it's the same principle. It is sad that they are losing their mother tongue. That's even more important to get them excited about their cultural and history content. So that a lot of, in Canada, I've come across a lot of Chinese Canadians who came to me as adults saying, oh, I wish I could have learned Chinese when I was younger. Now that they are trying to learn it as an adult, when they renew their interest in their culture and history. So yeah, so.
Yeah, if I could just add, I think the concern for many of us here is, given that there is a limited amount of time being dedicated to teaching and learning mother tongue language in school, and so the use of a language other than the mother tongue would reduce even more the time that the students are exposed to the mother tongue language. So then there is that dilemma. So I think in the question that Azima puts forward is, I think there are two issues here. One is about enabling the students to make meaning, understand what is going on in the classroom. And the other concern is about developing their Malay, right? I think that these are two different issues that we need to tackle at the same time. I think one thing, the value of translanguaging is to enable the students to really be a part of that lesson, so that they won't switch off, So when Professor Angelin was talking about the need to excite them, to motivate them, is actually to draw them into your lesson, so that you can, do whatever that you want with them. Because if you don't motivate them, it's hard for them to understand what is going on, then they will further not listen to you, right? So translanguaging serves that purpose, in my understanding, yeah. But I think that the issue of developing, interest, developing the proficiency in the language, that has also to be addressed. And I think Professor Angelin also alluded to the need to expose the students, not just within the classroom, but also outside. And so the approach that has been taken by the authorities is for encouraging parents to speak the language at home as much as possible. But also in school, there could be some adjustment in allowing the mother tongue language more exposure in terms of, I always get my students to be as part of the project, to look at the linguistic landscape in schools. And then most of them will find that, what they see is always English. All the notices, the posters, whatever that is see around the school is English, and very little of the mother tongue language. So it sends a message to them indirectly that the mother tongue language is so important, right? So there needs to be exposure to the language as well, other than in the classroom.
The invisibility of our mother tongue languages sense of quietness is very important. The students are not dumb, they pick it up so quickly. So yeah, so the linguistic landscape. So it's very important.
Oh wait, there is another question here. Okay, first from that same friend, Herman from National Library. Is it okay to teach comprehension first and then you break it down to teach grammar?
Yes. Focus on meaning, focus on comprehension. And break it down to grammar, especially useful when you need to scaffold their production. When they need to make sentences, right? When they need to write a short paragraph, a short poem, a short story, make a poster. So yeah, you can be flexible. You can switch to sequencing. As long as students are with you, they are not switched off, and they're interested in the content, and have some interesting ideas, creative ideas to communicate, and we scaffold. We are giving technical support. Technical language is a technology. We are giving them the Malay technical support, Malay language to support them. when they have the desire to express their creative ideas.
Okay, that's right. Just like people know here that we plan to stop at 12 on the dot. So we have 10 minutes. So if you do have questions, do plan your questions now so that we can take advantage of Professor Angelin while she's here. In the meantime, I'm just reading one more question from our colleague through Zoom, and by Fang Qiang, our new colleague in the Chinese language division. Is it recommended to use translanguaging to teach grammar patterns? If so, is it similar to the old-fashioned grammar translation method?
Now that's a very important question. No, don't do grammar translation. Don't do it. Because grammar translation is to be done in the university lecture hall. Because you are teaching about the language, the theoretical grammatical theory. Teaching in our classroom is about using the language. So we reduce the terminology to a level that students can handle. And don't use all those morphological terms that Professor Lopez is finished. Okay? Those linguistic terminology is reserved for the university linguistic classroom lecture hall. But that's why I say I teach sentence patterns, I teach lexical patterns, vocab patterns, patterns. They are not a rule, they are not some linguistic rule. And we need to give tons of examples and then to give generative pattern, like X is Y because, okay? So I don't know about Malay language, but we need to be able to extract the sentence pattern so that they can substitute the X, substitute the Y, and then can generate the pattern, right? So it's grammar translation. The problem with grammar translation is the focus is not on use. The focus is on knowing about abstract knowledge about the language, right? But teaching grammatical patterns, sentence patterns is about giving them a technical handle on the use so that they can generate new sentences, new output. Now the difference seems very difficult, but once you see the example, then you will know this is grammar translation. This is like giving them the grammatical patterns, the sentence patterns to use to generate new sentences.
I think it goes back to what you were mentioning earlier about providing the students with the tools, with the scaffolding in order to express themselves with what they just learned.
Yeah, Dr. Move, please, Prof. Move, please. Salha here.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Prof. Lin. I think it is very enlightening to hear your presentation today. Thank you so much. I'm coming from Ministry of Education, the curriculum planner for Malay language. Now, I'm not sure how relevant this question is, but most of the time I hear teachers asking and informing us that they have to use the translation approach when they teach the students, especially at the lower primary level, because as you know, more than 60% of our students actually speak more English than their own mother tongue. So the teachers were still grappling on how they can make their students understand simple instructions and simple words so that they can move on with the lesson. So my question is, to what extent, if this is allowed, we don't say that we allow that, but then we just want to hear how the kind of approaches that teachers are adopting in teaching Malay language to their students. So my question is, if this is okay, to what extent can this be done with our students at the lower primary level? And secondly, we know of this immersion approach in the teaching of language, and that's where the students are given more, or in fact full exposure of the mother tongue, and no English language is actually so-called allowed in the classroom. How effective will this approach be, or how effective is this approach if you take a look at the reference to the profile of the students that we have now, and I'm talking about the Singapore context? Yeah,
thanks for a very good question. This is a question I've been struggling with, because when I worked in Hong Kong for the past 20 years, moved 5 years ago, I was in constant collaboration with the Education Bureau in Hong Kong, and they're wonderful people there. They have similar concerns and similar dilemmas, and I'm fully sympathetic, and I understand, because there can be the concern that you can overuse it. My idea is, my personal idea, I might change. For early immersion, kindergarten level, when the content is at a level that you can use multimodalities, and you can use all the reality, visuals, images, gestures, role play in early childhood, when the content is not as difficult, then you can fully immerse them. But still, depending on the profile, so your question was important, the profile, whether the students come with some Malay from their family, then that will help. If the student is already coming from a totally English-speaking family, then we need to attend to the emotional, affective well-being, the emotional aspects, especially for young kids. So you have to be flexible. You can put in some words of comfort to help them to feel accepted, to feel valued, and but it's not a translation approach, okay? I won't call it a translation approach, but I will call it a meaning-focused approach, so that students feel that, okay, this is how I call this at home, a water bottle, and in Malay, I call it this, right? But you don't need to do a translation. You allow them to, because whether you allow them or not, they will do it here, neurologically, right? Because what they have learned at home is the English medium to mediate the concept of this content. So you can't stop them. They will automatically make a connection, right? So the focus is on valuing students and making them feel accepted and not punishing them for speaking some English, but accepting them. But I won't say it's a translation approach. I would say it is a learner-centered approach, focusing on their feelings, on their emotions, and at the same time understanding that they will need to make the neuro-linguistic connections anyway, whether they speak it or not. Because the first time they experience this is, oh, it's hot, okay? Then they will say hot, right? It's automatically the neuro-linguistic pathways will be hot. And then you can say the Malay word for this is so and so, what's the Malay word for hot? Okay? You're hot. So they will laugh. Now this is cold. The Malay word for cold. Yeah, so I'm praying with you. So with young kids, they feel that you are accepting them, you are cracking jokes with them, and you are not punishing them for expressing who they are. But they can't help it, because the first time they say, oh, I'm so hot, right? Then they will say it, or if they don't say it, they still activate those neuro-linguistic pathways.
Thank you so much, Professor Izolan, for that wonderful sharing and attending to all the comments and.
I want to say thank you to you, because you co-create the content today. I've learned so much from all of you, from your questions and this new content emerging from our interactions today. How to say thank you in
Terima kasih. Terima kasih. And then you'll say sama-sama.
Thank you so much.
Let's give a hand.